All right. Well, let's go ahead and get started at the very least. So, okay. So if you don't know who we are, we work for, oh, there we go. Thank you, Stacy. We do have somebody watching, so thank you. And while people are logging on and getting settled in, if you want to just write in the chat where you're from and the name of the facility, I love seeing where people are at. So that just is fun for me. But if you don't know us, we are coaches for the Dog Gurus. So the Dog Gurus helps pet care businesses launch, grow, and profit. We offer business consulting services as well as training programs for pet care businesses. And I'm Shantae Marquez, who is the business development guru and profit network coach. And today I'm with Coach Ed Kaczmarek. Ed, do you want to just give people a little bit of background about yourself?
Yes. Hi, everybody. This is Ed Kaczmarek. I'm co-founder of Urban Pooch Canine Life Center and Urban Pooch Training and Fitness Center in Chicago, Illinois. And the Urban Pooch Canine Life Center, we're on year 12. And the Urban Pooch Training and Fitness Center, we are on.
Ed, I think your sound went out.
Yes, it did. Sorry. We are a facility that has everything from retail to daycare, cage-free boarding, bathing, full-scale grooming, and then everything dealing with training and behavior, including agility.
Awesome. Awesome. And Stacy is from Canine Resorts in Overland Park, Kansas. So welcome. So today's topic is about performance feedback systems. We've kind of been doing this whole staffing thing. A couple weeks ago, it was about talent evaluation system. Last week, we did the onboarding. And now we're going to do a topic today about performance feedback systems. And so we're really trying to give people the information so they can hire correctly and get started on the right foot. But before we get started, I want to go over a few housekeeping things. During our chat, we welcome questions, comments, and feedback to the discussion. The more the merrier. It actually helps give us a robust conversation that people will benefit from. And I want to let everybody know that next week, Wednesday, May 5th, Susan Briggs, co-founder of the Dog Gurus, will be joining me to talk about dog evaluation systems. She's really passionate about this. So if you want to know how to prevent less injuries and fights in your off-leash play groups, then don't miss it. But Ed, are you ready to boldly go where no man has gone before? Ed's a bit of a Trekkie.
I totally am.
He's a bit of a Trekkie, so I thought I'd throw a little Star Trek flair.
I love that.
Okay, but let's get back to the real topic. Performance feedback systems. I know you used it at Urban Pooch, so go ahead and let's get started. Tell us a little bit about it.
Sure. So, a while back, Susan Briggs, one of the co-founders of the Dog Gurus, and I had worked on, we knew that a lot of the feedback we were getting from people were that one like performance review each year was just not working. Like something would happen with someone and a manager would be like, "Ooh, I'm going to write that down and get them on their performance review 8 months later," which totally did not help anyone. It didn't help the facility, didn't help the person, get better or rectify the situation. So, basically what we designed are quarterly performance feedback connect meetings. We just say quarterly performance feedback sessions. The review is not in there. And then the compensation discussion comes separately. And, by disconnecting the compensation discussion, it allows you to have so much richer of a conversation about the different performance, and ultimately you break up the performance feedback sessions into quarterly topics such as your core values and the performance of the company. Also, how is the person as a manager, or how are they with soft skills? And the Dog Gurus does offer a whole template, for all of this. And then ultimately, what we did is we designed forms, and we took the Dog Gurus forms that, we all developed, and then we just added in some of our skills that were specific to the Urban Pooch facilities, and we created PDFs that had like radio buttons that you could just select it, or it would be a feedback section where you just put your cursor and you type, and then if you type more, it will move up or down, and to make them as easy as possible. And the whole idea behind it is a couple weeks before you are scheduling the quarterly performance feedback session, you send out to all of your employees the quarterly performance feedback self-assessment form. And this gives the employee or team member an opportunity to say what they're feeling about that specific topic and set of skills. And then the goal is that they give it back to the manager at least 1 week before the scheduled quarterly performance feedback session. If the manager doesn't get it back in time, then they would move that meeting, because you want the manager to have time to review it and ingest it and, be able to ask questions about it. And it's really to see the temperature of what the employee feels and what their feedback is. And it's all meant to create an open session of rich dialogue around the skills, where the manager says, this is my assessment, I see your assessment, we're a little bit, we have a difference of opinion in that, let's talk it through. Like, why do I feel this way and you may feel it's here, or vice versa. I mean, many times employees will grade themselves lower than the manager, but it all depends, on the employee. And, the most important, key thought behind all of this is that the quarterly dialogue, and getting two human beings together to talk in private is magic. And, because talking one time a year and then the rest of the year just in passing for 2 minutes about this or 2 minutes of that, it doesn't give the employee proper time to think through how they feel about something.
Exactly.
And
I also think that if you are checking in on them, as you said, in quarterly basis, if there's anything that they're struggling with the job, or they're starting to feel where they're not valued, I mean, that's a check-in point there. And I think that you can kind of find out what's going on with the employee and let them feel heard. And maybe they were thinking about quitting or something like that. But if you're having open dialogue and they feel that they have this back and forth talk with you, I think you can probably save that relationship and not have them think about the only option is to move somewhere else.
And you know what, Shantae, that is totally wonderful that you brought that up, because one of our core insights is that we firmly believe in our hearts that everyone wants to do a good job.
Right.
And some people may think they're doing a good job, but maybe they aren't, but they don't get the feedback and they don't have an opportunity to say, oh, well, I thought I was doing a good job, and talk about it and level set. And, the only way to do that is to have continual connection, and talk about it.
Right. And I also think it's important to be able to hear from the employee's perspective as to why they're doing something a certain way, because then you can address that, whether, that's the way you want them to conduct that task or not. But letting them be heard again. Once again, letting them be heard is really important. Now, if they're, I know that you said it's quarterly, but if you have a brand new employee, is there
there is, I forgot to mention that. So for the new employee, there is an automatic and a form to go with it for a 30-day self-assessment and connect meeting. So with a brand new employee, they would have a meeting at 30 days and another one 60 days later at 90 days to keep them on track with everything.
And who's doing the check-ins with it? Is it the department managers or is it you?
No, it's their direct manager, whomever they report to, because we just find that is most effective. And then, for instance, what we do when you have that one time a year where you have the compensation check-in, basically what we do is we sit down with all the managers, we go through all the employees and say that our goal is a 5% budget for everyone. Well, then we sit down and we go through everyone and we say, okay, this one, how did their performance feedback, sessions go? Where do you think they're at? And you just go through each person. And then there's a separate form to go through just the compensation check-in. And, that is where you would tell them, this is your raise, or this is what we're doing, or this is your bonus. So, setting it just off 1 month from the regular quarterly performance feedback session, disconnecting it means that you're going to have richer feedback because it's not so focused on money.
Right. So I guess really, the nuts and bolts of it is you need to identify each role has a different assessment, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, so you have to identify what role are the technical skills, what role is necessary for the soft skills to have that. Like a customer service person is going to be having different soft skills than
a trainer.
Mm-hmm, trainer.
Yeah. Right.
So I think that's like really kind of the starting basis is figuring out what are the skills necessary for this position, and then you can develop your feedback system based on that. But I also heard that you wrap in your core values for the business into that. So can you talk a little bit more about that?
Sure. And what we did when we came out of COVID, we thought it was a good time to level set with everyone. This is our mission. These are our core values. And this is what the core values, how they translate into real life. And it was a one sheet that we had every employee sign as they returned to work. So, one of the quarterly performance feedback sessions is focused on how well the team member aligns and lives the core value. But what we did when we customized, when we took the Dog Gurus packet and we customized it for Urban Pooch, we added the core values into every single performance feedback session because we felt that it's important to always keep those front and center because everything we do as a company is driven by those core values.
Absolutely. I love that because it's easy to get, I don't know, sidetrack is the word, but there's a lot going on and people have all sorts of stresses, whether it's inside, working their job or outside of their job. And it is, I think, really important to realign them and remind them why they're here and what the culture that you guys are trying to maintain.
And I think that the goal for the quarterly performance feedback sessions is to keep them to 60 minutes. But it's the one meeting that I would say, give yourself an extra 10 minutes just in case, because if I could have an extra 10 minutes with, even if it's with every person, it is like a good 10 minutes extra well spent since you're already in constructive dialogue.
Yeah. Samantha says hello.
Hi, Samantha.
And then Jay, he's a kennel tech and he's in school. We're not currently hiring right now, but I would say that you should seek out a place to work that maybe has some type of really robust training system where you could learn from them locally for you. One of the things that I wanted to ask you about, Ed, is what was the difference that you saw in your staffing, longevity of staffing before you use the feedback system and after you use the feedback system?
Well, the one thing is when we started out, we wanted to start this in third quarter last year, but because of us customizing everything to all of our own skills, we just introduced it in January. So, we are only on to Q2, and I think what it does is already it's telling people we care more and we care about your development. And the one thing that's incorporated, into the guidance for the quarterly performance feedback sessions is always talking about career pathing. Where are your interests, team member one? Like, all the different areas of the company, other than being a daycare counselor, where do you see yourself going, or where are your interests? We have groom techs that, we're hoping one of our groom techs would like to become a groomer because that's a great succession path right there. But it really shows people you care, and it makes them see a future for themselves within your organization. And I think those are the areas that we've really seen have an impact early on. I mean, I'm excited to see, like, at the end of this year when we've gone through 4 quarters, because, we used to always think, it's beneficial that you lose a couple people here or there, because then the new people you bring in aren't quite as expensive. But as we've grown, since we've been in business for 12 years, I think now we would tell you we would rather keep all of our A people, even if we have to pay them a little more every year, because it has increased efficiency across the entire organization.
Well, yes, I think not only efficiency, but in the long run, it actually saves you money. You might have to be paying a higher wage, but you're not going to have the expense of, putting out that classified ad, the time that you're going to be spending and your manager is going to be spending going through resumes, interviewing, and then training. I mean, there's a huge burnout when you're constantly having to train for your managers. So if you can really develop that employee and keep them there, I think that's the best thing. But also just from the beginning, showing them that this is a career path, it's not just a job, is huge, because they want to know that there's a place that they can grow. I mean, everybody comes to work for our facilities because they're passionate about animals. I mean, I just, everybody says they love pets. That's why they're here, of course. But
Right.
They need to know that this is a place that they can grow with you, and it can be a long-term employment if that's what they want.
Definitely.
Now, how has the staff engagement changed for you once you started, this past couple months that you've been using this feedback system?
You know what? I feel that everyone is more engaged. And what I've seen is it also, even though we always tell people we want to hear feedback all the time, it now sort of brings people forward to give that feedback sooner. Because telling everyone we always want to hear your feedback. It's sort of like when you start having the dialogue with them, they then want to give you feedback more often. So even if it's not the quarterly performance feedback session, they'll stop you in the hall and they'll say, can I talk to you about something? I want to just, talk through some feedback. And, that is like gold. That's like, golden dust that you sprinkle on everything, that people are more willing to have those conversations more often. Yeah, and I think that is really important.
Now, Catherine is asking, can you provide samples of evaluation sheets used? Well, Catherine, the Dog Gurus actually has a performance feedback system product that you can download, and it is samples of evaluation sheets based on the specific role in your business. So if you want to take a look at that, that's on the online store. And I think that's really kind of what you're looking for. But I can kind of go through the steps for you. And just in a nutshell, like number one, to develop your own performance feedback system, you wanted to do it yourself, it'd be really determining the job knowledge, technical skills, and soft skills of the role. Then you need to set goals and benchmarks for that role or that employee. You need to create a tracking system. You need to schedule regular reviews. And I would advise, I had my managers, whenever day one of their new employee started, I had my managers schedule a year in advance what their reviews, when they were going to be. They just did that right off the bat, because if they didn't do it right off the bat, they were going to forget to do it. And then when you are in your review session, you want to give specific feedback. And then after you give the feedback, you want to develop an action plan for them and then monitor the progress. That's kind of it in a nutshell. Did I miss anything, Ed?
No, but Shantae, are we able to share a screen? I can go through one of the quarters just online to show, technical job knowledge feedback, which is quarter one for us.
I'm not sure if we can share the screen. I am new to using BeLive, but if anybody, let's see. Can you?
Oh, you know what? I can. Let me just see.
So Ed will show one for you. Thank you.
Let me just see.
Now, before we go too far along, I definitely do want to talk about, at some point in this conversation, how to constructively give feedback that is not positive, or it's feedback where there's an opportunity for growth or doing better. Because I think that is, for a new manager, if it's a new manager that you promoted and that's their new role to give review, that's an uncomfortable situation. So at some point in this conversation, after maybe you share your computer screen, I'd definitely like to dig into that and let people know how they can give constructive feedback kindly.
Okay, and I'll go through this real quick. So this is...
Okay, so let me show it screen. Hold on one second. I think it should show it. All right.
There we go.
So if you guys can see that, can you let us know in the chat?
So this is our quarter one technical job knowledge feedback. And this goes through where, someone puts in, they always give themselves scores on overall performance for each of the quarterly sessions. And then this is where I told you, we have our page, our mission statement, our core values, and what does that look like in real life? And then here is the assessment, the quarter one assessment on technical job knowledge. So you have pet care, housing, and work safety. You have pet health, and they would, you would put in, it's either exceeds, consistently meets, inconsistent in meeting expectations, or improvement needed. We have dog handling, and you can provide examples of how the knowledge is applied. We have dog management, and you'll see all the different things from play style identification, and again a box to put in how the knowledge is applied. And then you have a summary based upon performance feedback discussion, talking about, what do you feel are your current strengths? What do you want to focus on, until the next feedback session? The employee can make comments there, and then the manager makes comments there. So that's just an example of one of the quarters.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I do agree with you what you said earlier about when they do self-assessment. Every time I had my staff fill out their own self-assessment first, they were way harder on themselves than how I felt.
Yeah.
So, but it's good to know a temperature where their head's at,
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, it's much nicer to tell someone you think they're better than they think they are, for sure.
Here. So let's talk about when you need to tell somebody that there's an area for improvement. Can you kind of just shed some light on maybe best practices that you use?
I'll tell you the one thing, and this is one of the first HR managers that we used remotely. We had done some consulting with her, and it was just where so much of the friction is, where you expect one thing and the employee is just not doing it. And so, but what we always do in our minds is we create the reason why they're not doing it the way we expect. So what she suggested we do is we sit down with the employee and we say, our expectation is, and you put forth what the expectation is for specifically what you're talking about. We have seen this is what happens. Why is that? So instead of us telling them why we think they're not doing it, we ask them, why are you doing it differently? And again, it's the magic of dialogue. You're not telling them they're bad and you already know why they didn't do it. You're opening up the dialogue for them to share with you. And they can honestly just say, you know what? I thought I was doing it right.
Right. And maybe it's just that they learned it one way when maybe the system has changed or something. But I love that. And I think always when you want to, talk about areas of improvement for your staff, I think it's always really important to end that conversation where we're letting them know that we believe in them, we value them, we know that their potential is to achieve the goals that you set forth for them, and that you do have confidence in them to do their job, the way that you were talking about. So, I think that's good stuff.
And I do think like we do come upon situations where an employee needs to be written up about something, where we know that they know that something's supposed to be done. And, we have a form for that because, it's important to document things that may involve safety or, safety of themselves or coworkers or safety with the, with the dogs. And, that I think is handled differently. But again, we always want to think that every person wants to do their very best, right, and give them the benefit of the doubt. And, obviously, if you get to a point where it's the third time you're talking about something, and if it's critical, well, then that may be the time where it's not working out anymore. But at least, you've had the conversation, if it was that serious, you've written them up. But, it is important to just document when you have the conversation, what you talked about, just so, because some of us have a lot of employees and you want to make sure you remember what it was you talked about and, how they responded. So I do think it's important keeping good documentation, along the way.
Absolutely. And I used to hear sometimes my managers would be like, well, we've told them, when they've had an issue where they have to keep addressing a particular issue with an employee, and And my managers will come to me and they'll vent a little bit and they'll be like, I've told them like 4 times. And I'm like, well, maybe you should stop telling them and actually have them demonstrate it, like try to do it a different way. Like before, hopefully before you decide that, that the employee maybe is not a good fit, you've had the managers exhaust every which way that they could possibly learn the task that you're trying to teach them. And right. I think it's important to remember.
It's a very good point.
Yeah. Well, this has been an awesome conversation. Is there anything else that you want to add before we wrap this up?
I can't think of anything.
Star Trek?
I mean, I do. Oh, yes, of course. The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. Be careful of one employee who basically becomes like a virus and affects your entire front of house. I mean, we always have to. And, the one thing, as uncomfortable as feedback can be, things do not go away on their own.
No.
So you do, if you see something or hear something, say something.
That's great. Well, thank you everybody for joining us today. Ed, thank you so much for your time. This was a fabulous discussion. If you are not a member yet, we would definitely like to invite you to join our Grow Your Pet Care Business Facebook group. We just have 2 rules for that. It's be nice and no selling, but it's a great community to be a part of. And it's a great way to get ideas from other industry leaders in pet care as well. So everybody have a great afternoon, smile at a stranger, and take care.
Bye, everybody. Good luck.